Hello students, this video is on section 2.2, an introduction to fractions. So a fraction is something that looks like this. It has two parts. It has a top part and a bottom part. The bottom part is called the denominator. You can spell that like this. Okay? The denominator is the number of pieces we cut a whole thing into. And it's really, really important that we're not only cutting it into that many pieces, but that those pieces are all equally sized. Okay, so it is the number of equal pieces or parts a whole is divided into. Okay, so that's the bottom part of our fraction, or the denominator. The top part is called the numerator. And the numerator is the number of those parts that we take or use. Okay, so again, it's really important that with a fraction, we're talking about equal pieces. So an example would be like this. If I shade this in, so here my denominator is 4, because I have 4 equal pieces, and I've taken or shaded one of them. An example to show why this is important is something like this. If I cut it up like this and take one of them, I'm not looking at equal pieces, so we cannot call this a fraction of 1/4 because they're not equal. Okay? So it's important to know that we're talking about equal pieces. There are 3 types of fractions. So you want to know that those terminologies that we just talked about. But the first type of fraction is straightforward. It's probably the most common that you've seen. It's called a proper fraction. A proper fraction could be like what we just saw, 1/4. And the reason we call it proper is because the numerator is smaller than the denominator. We're not taking all of the pieces of something. We're only taking a part. And so 1/4, we could have 6/7. We could have something like 99/100. If there's a giant cake and it's cut into 100 pieces and you eat 99 of them, you're not eating the whole thing. You're not eating all of the pieces, so it's still a proper fraction. And proper fractions are always less than 1. Okay? Another type of fraction is going to be an improper fraction. And you might be able to tell a little bit, or at least take a guess, what a proper fraction means. This is not that, because this is improper. And an improper fraction, the numerator is larger than the denominator. So an example of that could be 5/4. And so we have 2 things that are cut into 4 pieces, and I'm going to take 5 of those quarters, or 5 of those fourths. So I'm going to take this one, this one, this one, and this one, and I'm going to take this one. So how many quarters have I taken? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's improper because we're taking more than a whole thing. Another example of that could be 7/2 or We can get always larger numbers as well, so 87 over 80. So these are improper fractions because the numerator is larger. Another number that we call an improper fraction would be as if it's the same size. So if we had 80 over 80, that's improper as well. Think of it like if you're at a birthday party and they have a cake and you eat the whole cake by yourself, that's probably not very polite. Unless it's your party, I guess you could do that then. But that would be improper for you to eat the whole cake. We also call it improper if the numerator is greater. And so if a proper fraction is less than 1, an improper fraction is at least 1. What that means is if I have a cake cut into 80 pieces and I eat 80 of them, I have eaten one whole thing. If we have a couple cakes cut into quarters and I eat 5 quarters or 5/4, that's actually bigger than 1. I've eaten more than one whole thing. So it's at least 1, which is 1 or more. Okay? And the final kind of fraction that we'll talk about is called a mixed number. It doesn't have the word fraction in it, but it does have fractions in it. A mixed number has more than one part. It has a whole number part and a fraction part. So an example of a mixed number could be 3.5. So 3 is a whole number, and 1/2 is a fraction. And it might be clear to you that a mixed number would always have to be more than 1. If I have even, let's say the smallest part I can come up with would be 1 and 1 over 100. So this fraction is quite small because that means I'm taking something, cutting it into 100 equal pieces and only taking one of them. So I'm taking something small, and I'm taking 1 and that. But if I'm taking 1 and something else, I'm still taking more than 1. Now, proper fractions are kind of on their own because they are less than 1. They have to be less than 1 no matter how we write them, no matter what they look like. They're not the whole thing. But improper fractions and mixed numbers are occasionally interchangeable because they are at least 1 or they could be more than 1. And so in this next section, we'll talk a bit about, well, let me show you really quickly what a mixed number might look like since I have an improper fraction here. If I have 3.5, that could look like this. So here's 3. I'm taking all of those 3 things, and then I'm taking 1/2 of this thing. So there's a mixed number illustration. And you might be able to see that it's similar to an improper fraction, and the truth is that we can switch between them.